Good. Now, you want to say anything? We're recording video. You know, you want to say?
I want to say I love my son.
Oh my God, wow, this is so
It's true. It's true. It's true.
Is there anything else that you want? Okay.
I love his mind.
Now it's just a toast. It's a goodbye. This is not a tribute post.
Two of us, we are going to apart, but we're going to meet. If we never apart, we're never going to meet. When we meet, we're going to apart. So enjoy the moment.
In the winter of 2023, I stood outside the Jackson Heights Branch Library in Queens, New York, and watched people shout accusations of child abuse at what was happening inside the library. Drag Queen Story Hour began with the goal of promoting reading and diversity, and involves drag queen storytellers reading books to children and their parents. Parents bring their children to reap the values of the event, which for many includes interacting with a culture different from their own. Around that time, I remember someone speaking about Drag Queen Story Hour who essentially said, "Everyone inside the room is fine. It's the people outside yelling who aren't okay." Their words brought to mind that day at the library. As people outside screamed, I looked up from the street and saw the storyteller, parents, and children waving through the window, smiling. They were fine. These words came back to me a few months later in April 2023. A spliced video of the Dalai Lama at an event at his public temple was posted on Twitter by an anonymous Chinese account. The event had occurred several weeks earlier and had been live-streamed by his office and covered by local Tibetan journalists. It was a graduation ceremony for students of a college empowerment academy. The academy's founder had requested the Dalai Lama's blessing for her students. She was also the trustee of a philanthropic foundation and brought her family with her to the event where they shared the stage with the Dalai Lama. This included her child, who spoke with the Dalai Lama several times. During one of the exchanges, the Dalai Lama enacted a customary Tibetan tradition between elders and youth, where an elder offers a child a hug, a peck on the mouth, and then sticks out their tongue and says, "Eat my tongue." The custom is a way of showing the elders love through playfulness, that they are willing to give the child everything they have. It's also a way of teaching a child not to be too greedy and think they can demand one thing after another. Like most Tibetan customs, it involves humor and laughter. As the event took place in the heart of the Tibetan community, Tibetan norms of behavior are to be expected by visitors. Local Tibetan journalists interviewed the mother and child directly after the event. Both voiced their happiness and contentment.
And since then, we were looking at seeking blessings from His Holiness. And, today we got this opportunity, and especially when my family was there with me. And all the students who graduated from I Empower Academy of Skills were also present. We're totally blessed to have got these blessings from His Holiness. He came, addressed us in person, taught about peace that the world needs and how everyone needs to feel together like brother and sister. And I absolutely cannot, express how I feel getting blessed by him. Thank you.
It was amazing meeting His Holiness, and I think it's a really great experience meeting somebody with such high positive energy. It's a really nice feeling meeting him, and you get a lot of that positive energy. It's not just like that, but once you get the positive energy, I think you're happier, and it's a better thing, and you smile a lot more. It was a really good experience overall.
But media and the world were unaware of Tibetan culture and reacted in fear and judgment at the words of an indigenous elder who learned English in his 40s. Of course, if due journalistic diligence had been performed, the post-event interviews would have been seen and journalists would have known that no one was harmed. But perhaps, like the issues in Drag Queen Story Hour, it's not the experiences of people at the event that interest some media. Although children and parents say they are happy, some people ignore them anyway and incriminate cultural expressions. They say they are speaking up for victims, but as a childhood sexual abuse survivor myself, it looks like they are speaking over someone and rewriting their experience. If someone doesn't know drag culture, doesn't really know trans people, they will be more vulnerable to fear-mongering about them. They will yell outside a room, even though everyone inside is happy and fine and understands life can hold more than one cultural norm. Because they don't know the culture and haven't slowed down enough to learn it, they respond loudly with fear and prejudice. This uncorrected news story isolated Tibetans and their human rights struggle, for a struggle will not abandon an ethical leader. In a strange way, it also isolated the world. Everyone is harmed, and those who know better are quiet. The April 2023 news story by CNN itself was built on similar racism and misunderstanding as the 2019 BBC news story. There were so many myths, stereotypes, and projections in the wake of CNN's news story that ignored truths, including the disempowered status of Tibetans living in South Asia. Ignored is the precarious position of the Dalai Lama as a refugee entrusted with the care of more than 80,000 Tibetan refugees. Ignored is the Tibetan Buddhist custom of apologizing without ego, from a frame of care rather than blame. Ignored is the impact of persuading people to disbelieve the credibility of someone leading a human rights struggle and eventually to doubt the struggle itself. Ignored is the media's willingness not to properly examine disinformation about certain communities that aren't seen as worthy of equal time and care. What does this willful ignorance mean when Tibetan children living under China's occupation of Tibet have had their DNA collected en masse, children as young as 5, by Chinese police? What does it mean when hundreds of thousands of Tibetan children have been separated from their parents to enter residential schools where they are losing access to their language and culture? I belong to 2 communities. One cannot freely learn their language without risk of arrest. The other cannot use a restroom without risk of arrest. If you can't use a restroom, your ability to exist in public is being threatened. If someone is destroying your access to your language, it means your point of view is being erased from this world. Pay attention to the power dynamics of speech. Examine your critical thinking. Examine your mindfulness. Dispel your myths about the Dalai Lama, who is neither pope nor president. Dispel your stereotype of Tibetan people. The following is a poem by a Palestinian writer, translated by a Tibetan from Tibet. I found it online and find it important to include here as it speaks of dehumanization by the media endured by the Palestinian people. The hurt caused to Tibetans by the media made me think about what my mother told me when I was a child. When you are experiencing pain, remember that others are experiencing pain too. As someone whose ancestors endured genocide in the 20th century, a genocide denied or ignored by certain countries and people of the world, I include excerpts of this translated poem as I live now in a country that denies the genocide of the Palestinian people.
Kushap ngansu tsesok lokiyu. Rafeef Ziadah. Tering nge luponi ngentin la tempe tepsu jik.
Tering nge luponi ngentin la tempe tepsu jik. Ngentong tang yigdi ki tsenye jen la shongyo bashik.
Nge rangki inke yang takbar che yue la. Ngemte geso ki du chu nam changju bar jang.
yin yang tadung kyo nga la titar ti jam Ziadah. Kyo ki samna kelte kyo cho Palestine miri ki rangi tugu chor shedang masamna nedön yötse seldo wa minam.
Nge sempa nangla korne sökom chepe topshuk tsel yinyang keze gaza la pen shimpe kabdir söpani nge kenga na mindu kushap nganchö chesok lopkiyo.
Kushap nga chö tsewa lobgyo. Nga chö Palestine mi ko chö namka tamate zenki sungje chesok lobgyo. Nga chö chowa lobgyo. Ko chö namka tamate zensung cheje miser belwe 제드 쭉싱 미릭 예제기 짜리 쭉제 구샵 나츠 채소롭기
Damgyuche nganse samling la kyotan kyoki miriki kojaksang. Dewe kyoki ngala mi damgyuchik jetang mirik yeje tang zensung soki tangi maleng.
Tene nge shipu yang kerti. Nge shipo tong yang kerti. Zamling na mishik yotam.